The topic that I had for you all today, I jokingly named this, you get a co-pilot, I get a co-pilot, everyone gets a co-pilot, because we are definitely deeply in the era of co-pilots here in the Power Platform and across the Microsoft stack for sure. So we're going to be talking about how this applies to the Power Platform, what we're seeing so far to date, and what is kind of coming up as far as co-pilots and using that intersection of AI to help us build solutions. Quick introduction about me before I move on. My name is April Dunham. I'm a principal cloud advocate at Microsoft. I have different ways you can reach me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at April Dunham, LinkedIn. I'm doing more on LinkedIn lately. Just search for April Dunham, and on YouTube. You can search for April Dunham as well and find me on all those places. So if we don't get to any questions today for whatever reason, don't hesitate to reach out on any of those platforms. Now, as I mentioned, we are in what we call the era of co-pilots, I guess now. So this is all about using a co-pilot or AI as a real-time collaborator that helps us generate content, spark creativity, and complete work. So kind of moving from kind of, having doing a lot of manual stuff to having that kind of assistant kind of, I jokingly say like kind of like bringing back, Clippy in a way. I have Clippy in the background there. So this is like Clippy on steroids. We can do so much more with some of the new AI capabilities that we have now to help us build solutions with things like OpenAI. And we're seeing this all across the Microsoft stack, as I mentioned, embedded into Microsoft 365. That's one of the things that they announced at the Microsoft 365 conference that just took place last week that I know a few of us here were at, like a SharePoint Copilot there. And we have that across the Power Platform as well. So really, what is this, why is this such a big deal for us, all of these Copilots? It's because it's changing the game of how people can get started using these tools. So really empowering every person with AI. So we talk a lot about the Power Platform traditionally being like a low-code platform, right? So you can easy kind of entry there if you know things like Excel and you kind of have those basic skills there, like formulas and all of that. But sometimes it was referred to as no code. But the no code story was a little bit harder of a sell because there was kind of a learning curve there to know like some of those Excel formulas and some of the ins and outs. With this new AI functionality and all these co-pilots that are popping up, it's really making more of a no-code story to get into Power Platform and low-code development with this by leveraging AI to be able to help generate content apps and formulas and all of that stuff for us. So really making it to where, it's not just for technical workers, like everyday end users can start leveraging some of these tools even more. And this is really nothing new, though. Some of these AI features that we're seeing. So it's kind of, Copilots, the big branding now that we're seeing in a lot of these things, starting with, GitHub Copilot is kind of what started it all for more of like the pro dev audience there, the traditional developer to be able to help write code and all of that inside Visual Studio and all that. But for the Power Platform, we started seeing this interjection of artificial intelligence way back since 2019 when AI Builder was released. So AI Builder being that capability to bring some of the Azure Cognitive Services models into the Power Platform. So pre-built models that we can plug and play into our apps and automations and all of that. Fast forward to 2021, then we started seeing more of this kind of large language model type thing. So think ChatGPT and all of the stuff that we can do with generative AI. Interject into the Power Platform with things like Power Apps ideas. So this is actually using natural language to write Power FX formulas for us, which I'll show an example of here in a little bit. And also in Power BI with writing DAX with DAX Quick Create there. Now, 2022 is when we started seeing a little bit more integration with these large language models. So with Power Automate, the natural language to flow, format data by examples, and then even things like being able to use cognitive services models for image and forms recognition to be able to upload an image of a paper form that you have and have that create a Power App for you. Now, where this really started taking up, though, was just this year. So over the last 3 months or so, we've seen probably the most innovation with AI than we've seen in a while. It's quite amazing when you think about it. I think in one of the keynotes that we did have at the Microsoft 365 conference there, I forgot exactly who it was, but they equated it to this is as a revolutionary as a time as it was back when the personal computer was kind of becoming a thing, right? This is how big some of these changes that we're seeing right now are. So 2023, early on, we started seeing those large language models and these copilots be introduced across the Power Platform stack. So we have Empower Virtual Agents with conversation boosters and the Copilot there. Inside of AI Builder, we have an open AI model that we can plug and play in anything that we can do basically with ChatGPT. We now have at our fingertips in a pre-built, easy to use model inside of AI Builder, which we'll look at an example of. And then finally, previews of Copilot inside of Power Automate and of Power Apps, which we will look at the Power Apps one for sure. So I thought, why don't we kind of look through each of these key AI features and functionality here and kind of take a look at what it looks like. And we'll start kind of with some of the more OG stuff. Let's start with Power Apps ideas, because I think this is often overlooked or just not known that it's even there to help you. And it's really powerful to speed up authoring with natural language. So with things like Power Apps ideas, we have and this works in Canvas apps, by the way. So I don't believe we have Power Apps ideas in model-driven apps yet. I don't know if that's coming. But in Canvas apps, one of the biggest barriers to entry that we often have is with writing formulas and having to know that formula language, which is PowerFX based off in Excel. So with this, if I wanted to do something like format this gallery, we have this new ideas tab that shows up here. So we can use natural language like we just did to say sort this kudos list ascendingly by created on. So we simply put in what we want to do, and then it applies the formula in PowerFX that we need to make that happen. So in the items property of that gallery, just by putting in the natural language, it was able to write that formula. And this is using some AI technology in the backend called Prose, where you can kind of tell it, the AI model, kind of train it on a formula language or a programming language, and it can help generate that for you. So if, I don't care if you're just starting out and you don't know all the formulas and functions, or if you've been using Power Apps for years like I have, and you just still forget sometimes what the exact syntax is, to do some complex nested sorting or filtering or whatever it might be, this is really beneficial. Like even myself using Power Platform and Power Apps for years, I use Power Apps ideas to help, so I don't have to go sift through documentation or try to remember what the exact formula is for something. It's really, really powerful stuff. We can use this not just for galleries and things that we're seeing here. We can use it to format data by example as well. So you can see we can, of course, do more fine tune it. If we want to add different sorting and filtering, we can do that and continue to tweak it. We can even format by example too. So there's a lot of things that we can do with this. We'll look a little bit more here later on. But we have a lot to cover, so I'm going to keep running through some of this, and I want to make sure that I leave plenty of time for questions as well. So if you save your questions towards the end, we'll get to all that. Now, the other big thing that we have that recently went kind of in preview here was Express Design. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier, where we can take a paper sketch or even a PDF static image, or even something called a Figma file, which is basically used kind of like by a lot of graphic designers to be able to sketch out what a application interface would look like. So we can take all of those and have it build an app for us using object detection. So basically how it works is we can give it our image, whether that's in a Figma file or an uploaded image that we have. It uses AI in the backend to tag all the controls on the image. So it's able to recognize if you have an input, a label, a button, things like that. And then it sets up our data source and then creates an app based off of that for us. So it's using custom vision, computer vision, and Dataverse as the backend in this case to be able to create the backend table. So what we can do with this, a good visualization would be taking even a hand sketched form like this registration sign up. And you see it's not the most pretty thing. It's legible, but it's just a simple hand sketched form here with some inputs and selections and buttons. So I could take this and upload that with this new image preview. So we can just go and upload our file, give this a name. So this is a registration application here. Choose the file of the sketch that we have here. It needs to be JPEG or PNG. So if it's a PDF form, you will need to do a conversion. And then you see with object detection, it was able to recognize all the objects that we have on the screen. So recognize these as labels, these as text inputs, and even these as buttons as well. Now, if it doesn't look exactly quite right, we can do some further tweaking and manipulate this to kind of change it around to get it exactly as we need. So this looks like it wasn't tagged right. It needs to be a drop down. So you can see I can click on that, change that, and this should be a toggle as well. So I can make any tweaks if the model didn't get it quite right. But the really powerful thing is what you're seeing here is we can have it create a Dataverse table as well. Now we can skip this step if we want to add the data in SharePoint or some other data source, but this can actually go and actually create our data model for us as well, and not just the application. So now with just a few clicks and just fine tuning what the object detection was able to recognize, we're able to have an application and get us like, I would say at least 60% of the way there. You can see like the formatting isn't 100% perfect, if we're being honest here. So you might need to move some buttons around. But what I did for us was create a form control. So we say we have form 1, and that's bound to the Dataverse table that it automatically created for us. So now all we have to do is kind of bind these buttons to the form control to submit the data, do a few little design tweaks to make it look a little bit better, and we're good to go. Now, the main thing missing here is really that kind of nicer looking design. That's where I really think kind of my favorite piece of this whole Express Design thing is the Figma integration. Because if you want kind of more of a pixel perfect look and feel for your applications, this Figma integration is where it's at. So how it works is we have a Power Apps toolkit for Figma that you can use to sketch out inside of Figma the app that you want. And then with that, so we can have something like this registration sign up. So this is a Figma file. I simply reference the Figma URL and select the Figma to app option when we're in the makeuppowerapps.com portal. And it creates kind of a pixel perfect app like this. So it looks much better, as you can see, based off of the design that we have inside of Figma. So lots that we can do there. This feature is still in preview. Definitely encourage you to check it out. Let me know what you think of it and if you run into any issues. Now, I mentioned, so that's kind of just all some of the earlier AI stuff that we have in the Power Platform. Now let's talk about Copilots, because we are, as I mentioned, in the era of Copilots. And I figure we can start with Power Apps Copilot. So this is giving us that ability to use these generative AI models to be able to create apps. So rather than go through some pre-canned demos, I think it's best to kind of show this stuff off live. Opens myself up to maybe having some issues, but I like getting input from you all on stuff like this. So what it will look like now, right now, this is in a private preview. So you do have to sign up for it and get access. Hopefully, you know, within as fast as the stuff is moving, it will get up in public preview sooner rather than later. But I will give you a sneak peek if you don't have access to this. So we'll have kind of this reimagined homepage in the make.powerapps.com portal. And we'll have this landing spot where we can put in what we want to do or what kind of app we want to build. So it's just an empty text box where we can put with natural language the app that we want to build. So I don't know if anyone feels, you know, like coming off mute maybe and giving me a suggestion of an app, or maybe using the chat and putting in a suggestion there, but I'd love to get some input from the audience here to make this interactive, and we can have it with Copilot build a Power App here real time and see how it works. You want to have suggestions on like what we should put in here?
What about an app for coding invoices?
Okay, so that's a good one. We're going to put I want an app, if I can type, for coding invoices. Now we'll see, like we're testing the bounds of this if it can handle it or not. So I just put in that natural language of what we want, and I proceeded with that. And what it's doing again is using this GPT integration with the AI model that we have here to be able to suggest first a Dataverse backend. So this is all Dataverse based. This is like a big question that I get anytime I show this off is, can we make this build a SharePoint table or like a SQL table or whatever it might be? This is only going to create Dataverse right now. So there's nothing stopping you from kind of using it, creating the Dataverse table, and then changing your app to use SharePoint instead. Once it creates kind of the front end for you, you can of course do that, but it's going to suggest a Dataverse table schema. So we can see with this, I just put in that prompt and it automatically suggested for us a few columns that we want here. So like invoice number, obviously something we might need, date, amount, status, and type. So quite a bit of information by me just putting in that prompt. But the really cool thing is we can continue working with the Copilot to tweak and fine tune this solution that we're building. So on the right here, we have the Copilot, and maybe I noticed something missing for like, maybe we need customer. So I can say something like add a column for customer name. And now the Copilot's going to go see that and then add some information. And excuse me while I let my cat in that is scratching at the door. Gotta love it. All right. So now with that, it's going through, and again, this is real time, so you can see it doesn't take too long. But now it just added a new column with customer name. And the thing that I really like about this too is you notice it's giving us all this sample data. So a lot of times when we're building solutions and we need to test it, we have to go and manually put in all the sample data just to make sure that it's functioning correctly and all that. This just does it for us, so we can make sure it works, which is really cool. And then so we had a customer name, but what if I don't know what else I need for this? I've just been asked to create some kind of solution for coding invoices. I don't know what else we would need for that. I can say to the Copilot, give me suggestions for other data to track. And it'll actually go and give me some suggestions on things for a solution like this that we might need. And one of the cool thing about it is these suggestions are clickable. So I might need a payment date or a payment method column, for example, or notes or discount. So maybe I know that I want a notes. I can simply click on that and it will go add that for me into my table schema, which is really cool. And then, yeah, yes, Lindsay, I had to pause there for the cat interruption. The troubles of working from home with a cat. But it's going here and it's going to add that in there. And I'll take some questions real time in the chat while this is adding, since it takes a little bit. How hard would it be to connect a barcode scanner so that the invoice can easily be scanned? It wouldn't be that hard at all. We can actually look through that real time, Tamara there. So, okay, there we go. So it added that column so we can scroll over and there's our notes column. So, if we're good to go here, I think we could just click create app and we'll take a look at what this generates for us. So this is going to do a few things for us. So it's going to create a Canvas app. So this is Canvas app based. It's not model driven right now, but since it is creating a Dataverse table in the backend for us, we could easily add a model driven app on top of this with just a few simple steps here. So that's another really cool thing about it. But what it's going to create for us is a 2-screen application. And the cool thing is a Copilotness doesn't stop here. I'm going to coin that term, Copilotness, because we have integrated Copilot control now, which you'll see once it loads on the screen, as well as a Copilot to continue working with this. And then it looks like awesome. So this is real time and they could be making changes, but I'm not seeing the Copilot in here, which is great. But for the Copilot control that I mentioned, hopefully it's working. There is a setting in there. So if you go into your upcoming features, you can actually use this Copilot control in any of your applications, existing applications that you have access to it. So you just go to your settings and upcoming features and enable this Copilot component. And it gives you a way to interact with your data with the Copilot. But it looks like they're making some changes since I just looked at this like Friday on it and pushed out some updates. So we don't have that landing screen. It just takes us right here to this main screen. But what it did is created a working app. So we have a gallery on the left-hand side where we can see all of our sample data that I added there. And then on the right-hand side, we can see the details of that data. Of course, with the ability to add a new record here and fill out some information, and all this being bound to my Dataverse table. I didn't have to do anything else rather than tell it what I wanted to do, which is pretty cool. All right, so we'll fill out some information. We'll just make sure this works. So we could add in some data here. Just call this test customer. We'll say this is pending. And then there's our new data inside of our Dataverse table. Now, assuming they didn't make any other changes to this, let's see if I can test this out. There we go. I'm going to shrink it down. And the really cool thing about this app that it creates for you is it's responsive. So you see I just shrunk the app down from being kind of taking up the full screen in a desktop view to maybe a more kind of mobile oriented view. And when I did that, it shrunk everything down accordingly and adjusted the user experience. So this is what's called responsive design. So I don't know if anyone here on the call has ever tried to make an app responsive in a Canvas app, because out of the box, Canvas apps are not responsive. So that's something that you have to go in and manually do and manipulate all these X and Y coordinates and widths and all that and heights. But now we can do that easily just by leveraging Copilot. It does that for us. And how it's doing that is with containers. So we do have these container objects that we can add. So you notice that everything that it's doing here when it's building out the solution for us is it's adding us into these containers that making an app responsive much easier. So we have left and sidebar and a right container and all of that so that this app can be responsive, which is pretty cool. And the other thing that you'll notice too, if we go back to the settings and upcoming features, and I do a search for modern. So the other thing that we have here is modern controls. So if you haven't enabled these, this isn't Copilot related, but some of this is using some of these modern controls. So I want to point it out here. We have these new controls that mimic the Fluent UI look and feel. So as soon as I enable that feature, you'll see this modern controls bucket. And so we can add in any of these modern controls into our app to make our app look better. So I'm just going to actually add a new screen here so you can kind of take a look at what I'm talking about here with these model controls. I definitely encourage you to look at these if you haven't already. We have all kinds of things like a drop down that's modern, so we can apply that to our coding invoices there. But the one that I love too is the date picker. Because I don't know, I'm sure we all just love the date picker in Power Apps because it's awesome, right? You have to click that OK button for it to work and all that, and it just doesn't look the best. This new modern control date picker is so much better. You just select the date, it automatically applies it. You have this view where you can switch easily across the months there. You don't have to do the endless up and down scrolling anymore and all that. So it's really just a much better date picker that we have there. So, and it's using some of these modern controls in this design. Now, the thing that it didn't do for some reason, because this is live demos and this is what happens, is it didn't add in that Copilot control. So I'm going to add it in myself. So this is the new Copilot control that you can add into your Canvas apps. So how it works is essentially kind of like a gallery. So we'll go and add the control and we'll bind it to our data source. So you can bind it to a singular data source here. So it's going to go into my invoices table for this example. And now that I have this, this is allowing me to interact with my data using natural language in basically ChatGPT. So this is really powerful. I foresee this kind of replacing a lot of the manual stuff that we would add in, like searching and filtering, or at least augmenting it so you can easily get information from your data better. So you can see some of the things that it's suggesting that it can do. So since we're tracking invoices and we're tracking amounts for those invoices, we might want to know something like what is the total amount of pending invoices, right? So I can select that prompt and it will go look through all the data in the table there that we have so far, and it's getting a sum of all of the invoices that had that pending status. So it's 3,400. So rather than having to do some kind of filter and adding in a total and all of that, I just add the Copilot control and it's able to get that information from for us. And again, the cool thing about this control is you can add it into your existing solutions. And this isn't limited to Dataverse. I can bind this control to a SharePoint list as well and get the same data from a SharePoint list as I would from a Dataverse table, which is really awesome. And then let's see a question here. Can you scope which tables the Copilot is referencing? Yes, so the Copilot right now, so you notice like we do in a gallery, I bound it to the coding invoices table. So right now it's only going to be returning data from that table. So that's where you scope in the data sources where it can return information from. And we can have multiple Copilot controls in an app that are pointing to different data sources if you need to interact with the data there. But we can ask it, anything that we want it to here. So instead of using one of the prompts, I could say how many items are pending. So maybe I just want to do a count of the number of pending. It doesn't always work. So sometimes you have to know how to ask the question. How many invoices are in a pending status? Let's try that instead. Maybe there we go. So you just kind of have to naturally know how to ask the right question. You got to be a little bit specific at times there. So it was able to return that there's 3 invoices in a pending status. So lots we can do with this control here. So definitely encourage you to try that out if you have access to it in your environment and see what it can do. And then for whatever reason, it's not showing today, which is awesome, but there is supposed to be a Copilot embedded in here as well. Let me see if I can get that to show up in another way, like maybe in an app that I already have open, since this environment is constantly changing. But let's open up this help desk request app and see if we can get that other Copilot control to show up, because I think it's really powerful as well. It's a maker Copilot. So the use case for this is, say you maybe inherited an application. So someone says, like, this application is broke, you didn't build it, so you don't know the ins and outs of what's going on, and you need to make some updates and you don't know what's going on. And unfortunately, it's not showing because you gotta love the live demos. But a little icon here for a Copilot would show up, and it basically would pop open a panel where you can ask it anything you want. So my favorite use case is you can actually pass it in a formula and Power Apps. Like say this, like I don't understand what this items formula is doing. I can say, explain what this block of code is doing to me like I'm a fifth grader, and paste that in. And I'll actually go using the GPT model and return information explaining this block of code. It can help you comment code as well, like help me write a comment for this. It can give you tips on how to make sure your app is accessible and anything that you need as you're working with it. But unfortunately, it's not showing up right now. But lots that we can do with that there. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving on because we just looked at the Power Apps Copilot there, but we have more Copilots to cover. And I'll share the slides as well because I do have some embedded videos. I always like to do live, but there are some embedded videos if you want to look through those as well. Okay. I show a pretty cool example of this conference schedule app and how you can use that in there. All right, but let's talk about Power Automate now. So we just looked at how we can use some of these Copilot stuff in Power Apps, but we have it in Power Automate as well with something called Describe It and AI Builds It. So there's kind of like an iteration happening with some of this functionality. So we're actually going to switch over to Power Automate and take a look at some of this. So if we go to My Flows, this one should be in all of your environments, or sorry, if we go to Create, it is in preview still, but it's public preview, so you should see this when you open up Power Automate. And it's this new type of flow, basically, called Describe It to Design It. So this isn't a true Copilot right now, although Copilot for Power Automate is coming. They did announce it a few weeks back at the Business App launch event, I believe, that a Copilot for Power Automate is coming. It's just not there yet. So what we can do with this is, again, use natural language to describe the type of flow we want. So I'm going to suggest, get a prompt from the audience. Do you want to give me some kind of automation that you want to do? Keeping in mind, before I ask for that right now, these are really the main connectors that we can use for this. So it's a little bit limited scope at the moment. So like anything SharePoint, Planner, Forms, Excel, Dataverse, approvals related, sending email and all that, Teams it can handle. But don't give me some scenario about like using Salesforce for something, I don't know, crazy. But if you can give me a kind of a more simplistic scenario using one of these connectors, we can see how it works.
How about taking in forms into a SharePoint list? I've done several of those.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's see. Let's think of how to word that. Take Microsoft Forms responses and add them to a SharePoint list. Right? Yeah, I think we've all did that flow. It's a really common one. I know I built too many of those to count. So I just put in a natural language prompt there. Now there's templates for this. So some of you might be saying, well, I could just use the template. But again, a lot of the hurdle is you might not even know to look in the templates, that there is a template for it and all that. So this is just kind of getting around some of those hurdles. So we can see that it suggested a flow structure for me, which is exactly what we need. We need to be able to have a trigger of when a response is submitted and get the response details and create the item. So what we can do is kind of confirm the connectors here and click next. And what this will do is dump us off into that traditional experience for creating a flow. Now, again, this isn't the ideal. Ideally, we'd have that Copilot along the way like we do in Power Apps, where we can keep interacting with the Copilot to make these changes, which will eventually come into Power Automate. But right now, we can use this and then just fill in the blanks here. So I can pick my form from the list, which, oops, I don't have a form yet, which is a bummer, but you get the point here. I can select the form from each of those, and then I'll go and create the item. So kind of gave us everything we need just by describing what we wanted, which is pretty cool. And we can do anything you can imagine with this, filling in the blanks. Now the other thing that I like too, and let me actually go back and let's create another flow, because I think a lot of people kind of know about this, but some people don't realize this other thing I'm about to show that's a hidden feature in there. Because one of my pain points with creating flows in Power Automate is knowing the expression language. Because as we know, the expression language in Power Automate is not the same as PowerFX. I think that's like the ultimate vision, is we have this one kind of programming language across everything, but that's not the case right now. So like how I would format a date time in Power Automates is not the same as how I would do that in Power FX and a Canvas app. So oftentimes I'm like having to go sift through documentation and remember what the exact syntax is and all that. With this new feature though, again, using AI, it made it a lot easier. So say in this email body, I want to format a date. That's just a common example. This doesn't only work on dates, it works on almost anything. I can use this new expression helper. So we can go to the expression tab. So when we have kind of our dynamic content panel open, and now we have this format data by examples. So I use this like crazy all the time when I'm building flows. So when we select format data by examples, it's going to give us a list of all of the different properties that we have so far, like above this action that I'm at in my flow. So if I know that I want to get the request date in there, I can select that field, and that's what I want to format. And I simply put in how I know the data comes in on its own. So maybe it comes in as, let's see, what is the date today? We'll say 5/8/2023, and then I think it does like a UTC, like a time thing. So we'll do that. So, and maybe I don't want the time. So I know that's how it comes in. Maybe I actually want to show this as just May 8th, 2023, right? So this is how it comes in. This is how I want it. And we can do multiple examples as well if we really want to make sure this is what we want. But this looks good to me. So I can simply click Get Expression. And bam, just by me putting in how the data is and how I want it, it created all of this Power FX expression that I need here to make that happen. I didn't have to go look anything up. It's pretty cool. And to make it even cooler, I don't have to go add this into my flow and burn a flow run and do a test to make sure that it works. I can put in the test value. So let's see, I'll put in 1/1/20, we'll say 2022. And I'll put in something different so it's not the same. Do test expression. Oh, awesome. So then it didn't work. So you got to love live demos, right? So one of the things that I noticed with this is why it probably didn't work is in desired output, it tries to suggest some things. So you notice when I start typing May, I don't think it likes like putting the May 8th in there. So you ideally want to use a suggested transformation. And that's why it didn't work. I did that on purpose, right? For it to not work. So we could use something like May 8th, 2023. Select that as the desired output, get the expression. And that looks a little bit more like what we need here. So now, hopefully if we do this test again, let's do, whoops. No, that's not a right time, but work with me here. That's probably because the time is like wrong, because that's not a real time. There we go. If I put in a real time, then it's able to get the full month name, the date, and then the year there. And I can keep doing many tests, but then I can just click apply, and I'll actually add this expression into my email action for me there, and I'm good to go. So definitely encourage you to use that if you haven't noticed it there already. As you can see, it works for all kinds of things, not just dates. So I can do that on a title field if I wanted to concatenate things. I use it like on people's names a lot. Like if I want to just get the first initial, maybe extracting a domain name from an email, whatever you can think of that you might want to do, extracting information from, you can use this with that. All right. So let's see how much time do we have. Well, we're doing pretty good. So again, eventually the experience, and let me actually switch back to slides because I have a better video for this, would be to have something like a true Copilot. So Power Automate Copilot is going to be that kind of end-to-end experience where we can put in, what we want to do, right? So I want to create a private Teams channel, and add that to a team and all that. And it will go through and do kind of what we just saw with the describe it to design it, suggest the flow and all that, but it just doesn't dump us off without any additional help. So again, the user experience is going to look a little bit different. But now we have a Copilot along the way to help us. So you see we have this Copilot tab at the top there. And now if there's anything that I need to change, I can say this looks good, but after that's created, I want to post a summary of the support issue. And you can see just by me putting in what I wanted there, it added that into the flow for me. So very similar to what we saw in Power Apps with the Dataverse table. I wanted to add a column, kind of the same experience, except it's going to actually add in actions and things like that into Power Automate for us. So just going to make the experience even better That's going to come here eventually. Now, staying in the Power Automate lane, I want to show you an example of AI Builder on the Open AI model. So we'll switch back to a demo for this as well. So I'm actually going to stay in this flow that I have created here, because this is a recurring flow that I've actually created using that Describe It to design it functionality. But we have this new AI model. And kind of to show this off, let's actually go into a new tab here, because I want to show you what you can do with this. So if we go to Explore in our AI Builder models, we'll see this new option here to use to create text with GPT. So, and then I'm blind and I never see it right off the bat. There we go. Azure OpenAI service, create text and summarize documents and more with GPT. So what this is doing is giving us the full power of those large language models, that is ChatGPT, to use in our apps and automations in this case. So what they did here to be able to test it out is give us a bunch of templates. So these are basically just sample prompts. I don't know if you've heard of like prompt engineering, and just a way to tell GPT what you want it to do. But these are to get your mind rolling on some of the things we can do. They provided all these sample prompts here. So things we might want to do would be like summarizing text. So maybe you get like a huge block of text in. Maybe you got customer feedback, right? And someone posted a novel of feedback for you. And you don't want to have to read through the whole thing. You just want AI to go and summarize that feedback for you. We can use the summarized text prompt for that. So this is simply telling the GPT model that I want you to summarize the text below in less than 2 paragraphs without adding any new information. And if there's not enough data in there, to make at least 1 paragraph, and letting them know that we can't summarize it. So it gives us this kind of start and end text prompt here, and then we can put in a block of text. Now, one of the cool things too that I use this for is I'm actually going to remove that. I'm going to write some other instructions. I'm going to say, write me 3 paragraphs of sample text that is a customer review. So I'm actually going to use the GPT model to give me test data to test out the other template that we have here. So it should go through and write some sample information for me, hopefully, and work. I just thought of this on the fly, so hopefully it's going to work. There we go. Paragraph 1. Well, that's pretty good. Nice. So what I can do now is copy all the stuff that it's generating for me. Cool. That's a lot. That's some good information. I don't want to have to read through all of that, so I can go back to my summarized text. And I'm going to paste in all of that stuff here. So there's all of that paragraphs of information, and we'll test this out. Now it's going to use that intelligent AI model to summarize all that information that we had in less than 2 paragraphs. So there we go. It's summarizing that this is a positive experience at the store where the customer was able to purchase a top-of-the-line laptop. So now we were just able to automate that. So you can see kind of the benefit of this is we could have an automation in Power Automate now that when a new feedback item is received, it summarizes it for you automatically with AI and sends you a Teams notification or something like that. So we can see there's all these pre-built models, and we have this shortcut button here when we're exploring the model to be able to do things like using a flow. So it's going to actually dump me right off here into a flow. I can click continue, and it's going to add in that action for us. In this case, it's going to be a manually triggered one, but we can change whatever we need. And it's going to call this service with our prompt. We're going to put in some dynamic content that we pass in from manually executing our flow, and then it's summarizing it. And one of the things you'll notice with some of these too, that I like to point out, is it's doing an approval action. So there's this whole like responsible AI, principles that are out there that Microsoft publishes. You can just do a search for that and find the responsible AI site there. But basically, since this is AI generated stuff, we need to do the due diligence to make sure that what it's generating isn't harmful or, violating anything like that, or is incorrect or all that. So that's why when you use some of these templates, like what we just did, it has an approval process in there. So it adds that approval process to have a real life human review the output to make sure it's not offensive or wrong or incorrect and all that. So that's what this is doing. And then if it is valid and it meets the approval, then it sends out the email summary there. So just one example of what we can do with this. And this works, again, not just in Power Automate, but also Power Apps. So if we go back to the Power Apps portal here, I'll show you an example of kind of where we're using this in an app. So we'll go to the Apps tab, and then I believe, let's see, yeah, let's do this application right here. So we'll open up this Canvas app here. And let me look while this is loading. Questions. Can we put the output of this flowchart like in Visio? I don't know, John. That's a good question. I have to check in that. See, I haven't tried that or tried to see if that was possible. Let's see what else. Okay, I don't really see any other questions. So this is an example of where we're using that model in an app. So to use this, we can simply go into our data tab, and then we have this AI model section. So we can find that GPT model and add that into our Power App as a data source. So now we can work with this however we want to. So the example of the app that I have here is Ask Me Anything. So this is using that model. So on this Ask button, it's actually going to take in our input in this case, and it's going to call that create text with GPT and pass in our question. So how it works is I can put in a question like, I don't know, does anyone have a question? Like anything? It doesn't have to be like tech related that we want to ask GPT here.
What's the weather like today in Zimbabwe?
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is going to show my ignorance. How the heck do you spell Zimbabwe?
I think it's an M instead of a yep, ZIM, and I think you got it.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I wasn't too far off. Yay. All right. Cool. So, and then with this, we went at like an extra mile, right? So when we reply, we can set the tone. So it doesn't have to give you like a rigid answer. You can say reply in a professional or enthusiastic or casual tone. So I might say reply in a funny tone, and it updates my prompt. So there's my prompt, and the tone should be funny. The style, okay, I'll have it reply Shakespearean, and it should be medium length, right? So I don't know how this will work with weather, but we'll see. So we're going to click ask, and then it should generate the response below using that AI model there. So we'll see how it does. Okay, there we go. Apparently the weather in Zimbabwe is the most curious thing. That's funny. So it doesn't give us the exact weather. So, but you get the point. Yes, but if we wanted Shakespeare to give us the weather in a funny way, we could do that with AI because a real business use case like this. I'm going to just show some of the stuff that we can do with this. I created an app, for example, like to help me write blog posts because I love making videos, but I cannot write, like as evidenced by me not knowing how to spell Zimbabwe. That's not my strong suit. So I created a simple application that will help me write a blog post based off a topic, and then I can just tweak it from there. So it's my blog scheduler app. It's nothing too crazy with it, but I just have an input in there, and then I'm calling that OpenAI model, saying to write me a 2-page blog post on the topic that I pasted in. So here's my topic, and then on my generate button, I'm simply giving it a prompt that you're a blog author, write a blog about text that I pass in. I can even specify the reading level. It should be at a 10th grade reading level and should be no more than a 5-minute read. So that will kind of tell it how long or short the blog should be. So that's like kind of a real life example of what I use, and I kind of take what it generates and I tweak it from there to kind of get me started. So lots we can do with this. I mean, to me, this is one of the most powerful things. Like the Copilot stuff is cool, especially those, if you're just kind of newer to the platform and not sure where to get started. But this is kind of giving us the whole power of GPT, which is really amazing. All right, and then we only have a little bit of time. I want to save time for questions, so I'm going to skip past all my pre-canned demos here. And the last thing I want to talk about is Copilot inside of Power Virtual Agents. We have this in RPA too, just by the way. I always like to mention that. We can use that same AI builder model inside of our robotic process automations with our desktop flows. So if there's something like in a legacy app that you need to modernize, you can still leverage this AI builder model inside of Power Automate Desktop. So I think that's often kind of like forgotten that it's there, but we can use it across the stack, which is really cool. So in this case, we're doing some like web scraping, getting some data from Edge, and we're having it do a summarization of that data with the GPT model, which is pretty cool. So anyway, lots we can do there. So now moving on to Power Virtual Agents. Now, to me, the coolest thing that we can do with this is the conversation booster functionality. So what this allows us to do, if we go and create a new bot here and try the unified canvas, so this is preview again, is you'll see that we have this new text box where we can put in a URL. So I have a good friend that owns a local pub here where I live, and I want to be able to create a bot for him so that people can get some common information that he already has on his website, like what are your hours, what's your location, what type of beer do you have, and all of that. So simply by me putting in that URL to his website that has all of that data, it basically can build a fully functioning bot for me with this new functionality called Conversation Booster. So as long as my website has the information I need, I actually don't have to go through and add topics, and define the questions and build out the conversation node and all that. I can simply point it to the website. And then now when I go in, I can see all the settings of what I can have here. So I can choose the site. I can have it specify like how strict I want it to be like really only get information from the site, or maybe you can make up some stuff and all that. But now I didn't add any other topics. I just pointed it to the URL, and we can actually go and test this out. So it gives us a prompt, hello, I'm BeerBot. I can ask it what the hours are, and you'll see that it replies with the store hours, and it gives us a link back to where it found the information on the website. So that's what I think is cool. You don't have to just like take the bot's word for it. You can actually follow the URL and make sure that that's actually true, and those are the store hours. So that's just one example. I can ask it specific questions about the beer that they have there, which one have the highest alcohol volume. It's able to pull all that information from the website as well, and just keep interacting with it. And you'll see here, these are my topics. I didn't create anything else. This is getting all the information using GPT from the website, which is pretty cool. And again, you got to know how to interact with it. I put where are you located. It didn't really know what I meant there. So I kind of changed my prompt there and say like, what is your address instead? And then it's able to get that information there and recognize it. But really powerful tool if you're using Power Virtual Agents. Definitely try this out. It saved me a lot of time in the bots that I built for people, which is really cool. In addition to that, though, we also have a true Copilot in Power Virtual Agents as well. So if you are building a topic out, you can leverage the Copilot inside of Power Virtual Agents to kind of get you through there. So if we go, let's go into this one right here, this Power Apps bot, and we'll go to our topics. So you'll see this option when you go to a new topic to create with Copilot. So again, this will let you do things like, here's some sample prompts. So like if I know I wanted like a complex topic where maybe someone was actually ordering something, like ordering a pizza in this case, I can say, let someone order a pizza, choosing from common pizza types and how they want to order. And that will actually go build out the topic with the conversation node for me. So it'll put in the inputs that we might need to gather from the user and all of that, and build that out for me simply by selecting what we need. So I'll say pizza order and click create, and that will go out and build the topic. So again, similar to what we saw in Power Apps and Automate there. All right, so wow, I officially got through everything, and I think we have like 10 minutes to spare, but here's the output of what you'll see here. So it defines some trigger phrases that we might have for this topic, like can I get a pizza, order a pizza, and all that. It's put in some question nodes, so like what type of toppings do you want, what kind of pizza, how many do you want, and then it's sending a message, and we can just fill in the blanks if we wanted to like go and add a flow, like call an action to actually maybe order the pizza or whatever we need to do, put it in the backend system and all that. But it got us a lot of the way there with the Copilot. And we can keep interacting with the Copilot to tweak things, like ask more questions and whatever we need there. Ooh, okay, that was a lot to cover there. I got through it all though. Want to make sure I left plenty of time for questions that you might have. So I will open the floor for any questions.
April, I could see a use case for us where we have an external process. We bring in scans from external to the company, and then our team goes through a pretty intense process of converting all that information and putting it into our CRM system. And I'm wondering, the trick is it's all based on terminal servers and Windows 10. We're working on that part, but for now, that's what we have to deal with. Are there any backwards compatibility issues with using these RPA, specifically the virtual processing, and using this process with Windows 10 or any terminal servers that you know
I
of?
don't that I know of, no. I haven't got like into the weeds in that specific use case in RPA to know for sure. But I mean,
Okay.
Windows 10 shouldn't be an issue. Terminal, I mean, I don't know about the terminal server thing. I haven't really heard. I
Okay.
can put some feelers out too and kind of ask and see if there's any known issues with that as well and get back with you. But I don't feel like it should be an issue with that. Like I know another thing that they had too in PVA. Like, I don't know if you knew about it. Let's see. Let's go to where was it? Machines. We have hosted machines now, like virtual machines too. Again, for your case, it might not be a use case, but now we can have hosted machines to host these automations, so you don't have to put it like on a personal machine. So that was kind of like a new thing here that we have as well. But yeah, I don't think that should be an issue. Sorry, that
Okay.
just came to mind when you asked that.
The other question that I have is, I see a lot of references, especially in the Learn documentation, where they're keeping things simple about single table apps, but most use cases pretty quickly get into a multi-table use case. So how do you build that out from the beginning with the virtual, or I'm sorry, not with virtual agents, but with the GPT and the
Yeah.
Copilot for multi-table scenarios?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think this Copilot stuff that you're seeing is going to be an iterative process. So the first iteration that we have here, it's only going to allow you to create a single table app. You know, it's going to create a single table structure. So if you have, you know, like nested tables, like an ordering, you know, scenario where you have like, it's not going to build that for you with Copilot. I think that is the goal. Obviously, I think as the stuff matures and they tune it more, I think we'll probably get to that spot where it can create multi-table apps. But right now it's going to be have it get you half of the way there, create the one table, and then go in and because it's just a normal app at that point, and then add in your other tables and go from there. But unfortunately, right now, you know, you got to crawl before you can walk, type thing.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. I see a question in the chat from Robert there. Do we know if a lot of these Copilot and AI features will be behind paywalls when released, or are they likely to be free with the current license? I don't believe, from what I've heard, that they've 100% decided on what the licensing model will be for all of this. So I can't tell you definitively what that will be. My hopes is, you know, that it won't, but I have no, they haven't officially announced that yet. So I'm not sure. I know, for example, you know, looking at things like that, Copilot Control, you might have noticed that we had the diamond icon on that, which means it is premium, so you'll need like a Power Apps license to use that. So things like that. I mean, is kind of telling, but I don't know as far as like the Copilot to create what their long-term plans are yet, because it's all so fast evolving. But I'm sure we all, you know, will keep you updated as soon as we know anything definitive there. Right. Anything else? I'm just scrolling through the chat here to see if I missed anything. Oh, I think I did pretty good answering the questions along the way in the chat because I don't really see anything that I missed there. Cool. All right. And then let's see if I remember the URL. I think it's AK@MS Power Apps AI Preview. If you don't have access yet to the Copilot for Power Apps, yep, there you go. You can go to that URL there and I'll put it in the chat. But there should be a sign up somewhere in this documentation if they didn't remove it already. Yep, there you go. Limited preview request. You can fill that out and try to get access and to that hopefully sooner than later. And I will say, we mentioned earlier that build, so that's free online event coming up May 23rd, I believe. seems like at these big Microsoft events, that's when they're announcing all the latest Copilot stuff. So wouldn't be surprised if there's more Copilot news at that. So encourage you to check that out and listen in to the recaps of what's announced there. All right. Well, guess a quiet group there. Maybe answered all your questions already.
This has been great. I think I've got tons of use cases in my head. I think they all exceed what the current Copilot capabilities could manage yet.
No,
but it's
I mean,
coming.
that's good feedback too. Yeah, I would say like, try it out and then like let me know. Like shoot me an email or something or a message on LinkedIn of your specific use cases, because I'm trying to collect that and just give it back to the PMs working on these features and let them know like, here are the common business use cases that people are going to want to do with this that need to be supported so that they kind of have that list. So please send that feedback my way.
I do have a question, April, with respect to, you had said yourself that, a low code, no code is not really no code. There is a learning curve there. And it seems to me like Copilot will take that learning curve, and you would still have to understand generally what these tools are and what they do. But my gosh, it seems like it just knocks that out of the park, doesn't it? I mean,
oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like you saw, like it's a different learning curve now because you have to know how to ask the right questions, right? Like, which is still like a struggle in and of its own. But yeah, I think it's going to really open the doors for like a lot of those, the big hurdles that we had traditionally with getting started with it, just making it that much easier. And then I love that too. If people use it the right way, right? You'll be able to keep using it to learn, because my only fear with all of this would be like you use it to generate the app, but you don't take the effort to understand what's going on behind the scenes, because I think like that's how we all learn and get better. So if you use like what I was saying, unfortunately it wasn't showing, but the like embedded maker Copilot that will show up here eventually to know and ask questions like, what is this code doing? And to really kind of understand it, like that especially will make people, understand it way better rather than having to search through forums and documentation and wait for responses. Just getting that instant feedback and knowledge is really huge.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I don't know if there's anything else, if you guys had anything else to share, like final slides, but I will stop sharing in case
I
there wasn't.
can talk real quickly. It is not a new site, but we do get that frequently that people know us through our meetup because that's how you sign up. But we've actually had this site on the background. So this is where all the recordings are held for all of our past ones. So we're trying to do a better job about driving traffic there. So I'm glad you asked for that. So you can see this recording in the next couple days once we get it logged in, any of our previous ones, and then you can always see the next month's posted on the website. And as Lindsay mentioned, we do reminders on Twitter as well. So we welcome you to follow us and interact with us there. Thank you, April. We really appreciate your time today. I am going to put one more thing in the chat. If anyone's interested, we host an in-person event annually called CollabCon, which is focused on all of the different collaboration aspects and improvements, software tips and tricks. It'll be hosted in Orlando this year, and our call for speakers is currently open and could use some love. We've got a good group to start, but we'll definitely need some more speakers. So I will post that link in the chat for anyone who is interested in presenting. We do both technology and soft skills presentations within that collaboration space. From an end user perspective, you're typically going to be more in the 101 level than the dev level, but we have a little bit of variety mixed in there. So I will put that in here. And then for anyone who's interested in attending, I will also post the website so you can get the save the date and all of that information. So we would love to see you one way or the other. Oh, wonderful. Well, we're so happy to have you, Peter. Thank you.
Welcome, Peter.
Yes, if you have questions, thoughts, events to share, feel free to use this chat. It's an open conversation for sure. Otherwise, we will let everybody get back to whatever comes next on their day. And we appreciate you joining us today.